Hello everybody, welcome to another video on the channel, and finally I am bringing back an episode of AOR Season 16 F1 series. I have been gone for just over 2 months I believe, and that's just been due to university commitments and such, and I just haven't had the time to put together these highlights for you, I'm afraid. However, I've finally found an opportunity where I can hopefully get everything together and up to date all the way up until Spa, which took place last weekend. So that is the plan, and hopefully we can get ourselves back on track, pardoning the pun. So this is round 4 at Baku, and for this track I've never really taken to it. I don't really enjoy it. Last season I did actually have quite a good race here, mainly by trying to stay out of trouble, starting around in the mid-pack, I believe 6th or 7th. But with good tyre strategy and letting other people make mistakes, I actually ended up finishing in 2nd. Although I highly doubt that that is going to be the outcome of this race. These drivers are very quick and a lot more consistent than they were back in F7. I do think that a similar sort of mentality, especially at this early point in the season, it might be an opportunity to get a decent result for ourselves. Obviously we were robbed of what looked like a very promising podium back in China, so I'm eager to try and get some decent points on the board. And Baku, although like I say not a place I feel comfortable with, might be the sort of track where we can manage it if we just are able to stay out of trouble. So going on to this first run of qualifying now, we're going to be using the harder tyres just to put ourselves in a decent banker lap and see roughly where we place ourselves. So very long start finish straight, and then right after start finish line you have the early entry into turn 1, and you really have to try to throw it in there and not get it wrong on that exit curb. It will spit you out. Then through turn 2, make sure not to touch that inside curb. You will lose a lot of time because the car will be bouncing all around, you won't be able to get the power down, and overall you will just lose time. Into turn 3, tricky braking zone, trying to stay out of that outside wall, and then into turn 4 as we see Hayden's just retired. You can get away with taking a little bit of curb through that right-hander, but not much. Then once again another tricky corner, the back of the car is constantly trying to step away from you, and then as you come through the turn of 6 in that right-hander, you've got a very tricky scenario of once again trying to stay tight but not clipping that curb too much. Hairpin in 7, very difficult, and then the castle section is renowned for catching people out, but we get through there relatively nicely. It's been a pretty clean lap so far, not the quickest, but a decent banker nonetheless. Then to the fast section of this course with this double left-hander as we then head towards a very tricky braking off turn 15, as we see a Force India has already gone off in trying to get through there quickly. You take a lot of curb, and you see that the very top driver is really jumping over that curb and nailing it every time. I don't have the sort of confidence to do that, and really at this point in the season I'm just looking to get some points on the board and make it a bit more likely to be competitive in this early stage of the season. But final run towards the line now as we put it up into overtake mode to use the last bit of that battery and get that extra top speed out of the car. And across the line we've actually done a 135.5, which isn't fantastic, but the less fantastic news is if you see at the bottom screen, we've disconnected again, and that's not great. This is now at the end of qualifying. I can actually tell you that this is the 2nd time I've attempted to do a lap on the Super Sauce, because I disconnected again in the pit lane. I didn't even manage to get out of the pits to try and set a lap, but we are trying to do one now, so very late stage, a very panicky run. You see, get it all wrong, and already we've disconnected after turn 1. I mean, it wasn't exactly going to be a great lap anyway with that sort of exit out of turn 1, but at this point I don't think I'd actually really noticed, but you see we've then just messed up completely going into turn 3 and smashed a wing, and that's going to be it for our qualifying. Just typical. You can see now we've realised we're backing off, and that's it for our session. So we're going to be starting all the way down at the back of the grid in P15 out of 17, I believe. I'm afraid I don't have the grid lineup after the quali session, because I only managed to reconnect on the start grid of the race. But we're going to be starting on the harder compound tyres. What we're going to do is we're going to try and stay in the sort of the back of the grid and let all the action take place up ahead. Just use our tyre advantage for a first stint. Just go very long into the race, keep it clean, stay out of trouble, and then at the end we should be able to make up time with not only a faster tyre compound, but also where other people have lost time through battling and such. You see, we're naturally going to be slower because of the tyres we're on, but our overall relative pace for the Grand Prix should actually be a lot better. So that's the plan. Hopefully all goes well. You see, we have Ian behind us, followed by Enigma. Not quite sure what happened to them in qualifying. Maybe they got caught out in trouble or could have suffered disconnections of themselves. But we're going to see what we can do. Formation lap starting now, and it's very important to try and make sure everything is as hot as possible. These tyres are more difficult to get up to temperature due to the harder nature of them, but we'll see what we can do. So the lights are coming on now. We've got it into first gear, brought in the clutch, and we are away. A lot of wheel spin off the start there, not ideal whatsoever. You see, we're already going to have pressure from Ian behind us. We're now heading towards turn 1. Got a little bit caught up on the curb on the outside. We've actually run wide, and we've been overtaken by both Ian and Enigma. Enigma's got a great start on those super soft tyres. Almost run into the back of him as it all gets bunched up. Ian looks like he's dropping back now, so we are into P16. Think he might have got some damage of some sort, possibly hitting the back of Lemon. I'm not quite sure. We can have a little look to the inside, but we're just too far back to do anything at this point. And these guys ahead of us, the majority of them are on super soft tyres, so we don't really have to worry about trying to get in front of them on track. So we've made up a position from that initial deficit that we suffered after turn 1. It's all getting very caught up through here. Think about going to the outside Lemon, but as he bounces over the curb, there's no space there, and really don't want to be losing our front wing in this early stage of the Grand Prix. First time approaching the castle section now, very, very tentative from everyone. Heavy fuel, cold tyres, and it was early stage of the Grand Prix. You really don't want to be doing anything see-through there. A lot of understeer there as we came through turn 12, but we managed to keep it out of the wall. And then as we come to this tricky braking zone, track constantly falling away from you, taking a small chunk of curb. It looks like Satin has actually clipped the wall and got damaged, so he's pulled over and out the way, as then Lemon runs very, very wide, coming out of 16 as we head through this very tricky section of corners early stage. We almost go straight into the wall coming through turn 19, and then the kink of 20. We have a really, really good run onto Lemon now, who's pulled over to the side. It hasn't really tried to defend the position. I don't know if he had damage, I don't think so, but it looks like we're going to be able to make the move stick. To come through turn 1, he's hit the curb on the outside and span up and then hit the side of us, but we did leave him room, and it was all fair racing, just unfortunate for him in the sort of exit that he got off that corner. As we now go on to lap 3, see Ruben up ahead, who started on the ultra soft tyres, I believe well inside the top 10, has actually got it all wrong going into turn 3, and he is now behind us, and all sorts of issues. As then now at the end of the same lap, Delphine in the Force India has smashed into the wall on the exit of 16, a very, very difficult place for traction if you get it caught up on that outside curb. And it just looks like on those ultra soft tyres, which can get overheated incredibly quickly, as there's now further action ahead as Kellon has gone into the wall in the pit lane unbelievably, and I believe also Corny has come into the pits as well. I'm not sure whether or not he got caught up in some sort of incident or if his tyres were just falling away, as now Ruben is putting us under pressure on lap 5 going into turn 1. He's squeezing us to the outside wall. We almost hit that wall, but we just about managed to get through there. His ultra soft tyres still having a little bit of an advantage, but at the end of the lap they were really starting to fall off. We're now actually losing time behind him, so we're going to get a really nice run on to him on the start finish straight, but it looks like he's going to be pulling into the pits, which I wouldn't be surprised at given it's lap 5, as it also looks like that the Sauber of Adidas Tracksuit has come into the pits as well to change tyres. So after all of that, just by lap 6, we've actually managed to get ourselves up to P8, which is surprising, as we now come to the end of the lap and Julian has smashed into the wall in some contact or another. Not quite sure how that came about, but that's promoted us up to P7, as well as our teammate who has come into the pits as well from quite high up in the orders. He goes onto the soft tyres to try to see that through to the end. We are now up into P6, although in terms of our effective position, as we now go past Tom as well, who's pitted, who I believe was actually in the lead of the race at that first stint. They're not the people we're racing. We're racing people like Enigma, who got off to a very good start, Hayden, who's just up ahead of us. We're just trying to see how much time we can make up on them. As in the last of the front runners, I believe, to pit was in fact Muller, who now comes out just behind Tom and has significantly fresher tyres. So we are now on lap 14, just over halfway through the race. You can see we have Tom and Muller behind us. Really don't want to get caught up in this battle. This is not our fight. So as we come down in towards turn 3, we're going to brake quite early on and just let them go by. Admittedly, we probably lost ourselves about a second, but I did not want to try and fight a battle that I was never going to win, no matter what I did, and possibly end up being caught up in some sort of incident in the process. Really, we're only fighting for the mid-pack here, so Enigma has already gone by and has pitted obviously quite a lot earlier than we did because he was going onto the soft tyres, whereas we are on fresh super softs, and we've actually come out ahead of Hayden, so we're in quite a good position. With 10 laps to go, we're on very, very quick tyres, probably the fastest tyres at this point in the Grand Prix. And we've got a decent gap behind us to Hayden, who's on the soft tyres, and Enigma is quite far ahead, but it's not a gap which cannot be made up across the last 10 laps. If we really push on and we're really smart about how we're driving, then there is a possibility we can make it up. See, just over 11.5 seconds in 10 laps. It's a big ask, but if we get it right, and his tyres will start to fall off by the end of the Grand Prix, we might be able to do it. It's now lap 18. You see, once again, look closely at the bottom of the screen there, we have disconnected. So very quickly, we're going to try and rejoin the session as fast as we can. I believe we've actually managed to rejoin on the same lap, so we haven't lost an enormous amount of time. Indeed, no, it is just coming to the final sector of lap 18 now, as Ruben seems to have managed to make his way past Hayden in the latter stages of that lap. But the gap still has actually come down despite that to 9.2 seconds. You see, I've been pushing on as hard as I can, putting in lap after lap, and that gap has been coming down. As we now head to the end of lap 24, we are within touching distance of P5. This would be a really, really good result, considering that at one point we were in last place on the first lap. We disconnected multiple times in qualifying, and we disconnected once during the race. So if we could come away with P5, that would be an excellent result for a circuit which I am not comfortable at, and all of those issues as well. It would be really, really amazing. But we are running quite low on energy because I have been using up to try and make up time to see how much later we're able to brake and how much more traction we have coming out of these corners. You can see we're trying to see if we can line up an exit coming out of turn 2. We've opened up the DRS, but we both get a bit of a kick of wheel spin. I'm just too far back at this point, so I'm going to use the DRS to stay close, put it back down into no usage, and really try and save it up for a final push on the start-finish straight of the last lap. So we're just staying in very close behind him and making sure we don't make a mistake, don't do anything stupid, and also we haven't been driving around in dirty air for a lot of this Grand Prix, so there's all of a sudden a lot less downforce on the front of that car, and in these tighter sections, which are still pretty quick, it's so easy to expect too much from the car, as well as these tyres falling away as well. So it's just trying to weave our way through that very, very tricky castle section, as we then clip a little bit too much of the curb coming through 11 as we bounce our way over the crest, and then we follow Enigma using that toe, just closing that distance once more as we head towards a tricky braking of 15 for the penultimate time. We've got a decent amount of battery now. You see we're almost up to about 2/3 battery as we come through. Enigma has gone wide, and this is our chance. This is our sole opportunity to get this done, because we can't guarantee that we'll get a run like this again on the last lap. So we've turned everything up. We've got rich fuel mixture, overtake mode as we are in the slipstream. We pull out of the slipstream now as we are only about halfway down start-finish straight. It looks like we've got the move done, but we're going to stay to the middle of the track to try and make sure that he can't come back at us into turn 1. Now we have to push, but we also have to be careful with our ERS because we are running low. So I'm going to try and use a lot of it on this next straight and just try and eke out as much as I can of a gap so that he can't come back at me. But if I can then turn it down in the middle sector of the track where there's not really an opportunity to overtake, and I can just use the naturally higher grip of these tyres at this point in the Grand Prix to keep me ahead, I should have enough battery at the end to hold him off to the run to the finish line. So just trying to get away to the end of the race now. See the back of the car is still trying to step out on us as we come through the very, very tricky chicane at 5 and 6. For the last time, the hairpin of 7 was run slightly deep at that apex. We're trying to get everything out of the car. The castle section one last time, don't push it too hard. So close every single lap this race to clipping the wall there, but we're nicely through 11 and then 12. You see that arrow of Enigma is fading, and we do have some ERS to work with. So we're going to come to this very tricky braking zone once more, almost touching the wall on the exit of 15. And as we come through turn 16, we're nicely on the power early, and now we turn everything up. Rich fuel mixture, overtake mode. We're just going to try and run this to the line, and hopefully this should be enough. Hopefully this will get us to the finish in P5. It looks like we're going to. It looks like we've built up enough of a gap to hold him off, and indeed we have finished in P5 at the Baku Grand Prix. Weirdly, Enigma, it says that only finished 0.1 seconds behind him, but it looks a significantly larger gap on my screen as we now see Julian racing Adidas tracksuit and a Bottas versus Stroll style finish to the line, but on penalties tracksuit would get the position back. It would be Muller to go on to win this Grand Prix ahead of Tom and our teammate, so decent points scored for the Renault F1 team with a P3 and P5, and the first set of decent points that has actually been scored for ourselves in this championship. We've had a few difficult races, let's say, so it's a nice change to be able to get some decent points on the board. You can see our fastest lap only beaten by a few drivers of the two-stop runners, and Muller, who obliterated all of the lap times of people that were on the one-stop strategy, really showcasing his amazing speed and pace once again. But that would be it for round 4 of the Baku Grand Prix, so stay tuned for the next lot of highlights videos. A lot of action and a lot of interesting races to show you, so I'm looking forward to putting those together. But thank you so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.